Well, welcome to the Property Brokers Pathway to Farm Ownership interactive panel that we have here at the South Island Agricultural Field Days on the last day of Kirwee. It's an opportunity to have a bit of a roundtable discussion with members of both the Property Brokers team and Heath Milne is here, the CEO of Development for West Coast. Jeremy and Anna Hart are farmer champions, dairy farming near Greymouth, and we're both Conrad and Gareth Cox. Joining us from Property Brokers, as I just said. So, I mean, the objective of today is to basically hear about some of the misconceptions about potentially farming on the coast, the opportunities that may be overlooked, but also how they stack up on a national scale as well, from what we're seeing in what is a very buoyant rural real estate market. But the thing is there is still opportunity, and the members of the panel today will be able to illustrate that. I want to kick things off with Heath Milne, CEO of Development West Coast, quite new to the role. Heath has just returned back from the UK, but Heath is a passionate West Coaster. So is his sister, Katie Milne, a former president of Federated Farmers. And Heath, in all of the time that you have from growing up on the West Coast to now being in a very sort of influential role to help support the development of the West Coast, can you talk us through sort of the trends over the years of farming on the West Coast and what's driven that?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And I'm with the development agency on the West Coast, Development West Coast, obviously. Over the years, I actually grew up on the coast. I left about 15 years ago to go to the UK. And I suppose when I left, we'd just come through a dairy boom. There was a lot of development of dairy farms on the West Coast, and then while I was away, things went a bit pear-shaped as far as the local dairy company goes. But that's now turned around. We've got a really solid dairy company on the coast now, supported by Yili, a Chinese company, and they are committed for the long term. And they've just announced a significant capital investment in their factory, which is going to hold it in good stead going forward. So yeah, a bit of solidity there. I think the thing I've noticed the most, I took my kids away and they were educated in the UK, and I suppose the education system on the coast when I left, had some question marks over it. But what I've certainly noticed is that the improvement in that whole area. We've got some really good schools, really good high school, in most of the across the regions actually, and that's really a good reason for people to come to the coast. Economically, we've gone through COVID, and you may have seen in the media we had a really large tourism industry that was growing, and that's hit the wall. But it's being supported by agriculture. So the primary sector, including mining, actually, is really taking off, and economically, the coast is really growing at the moment, which is good to see. We've also had a lot of investment come in, infrastructure-wise, from the government. We don't like necessarily taking government money, but if they're giving it, we'll take it.
Fantastic. And you've highlighted a couple of key points there that I really want to talk more to Jeremy and Anna, who are farming on the coast. But also, if I clarify more specifically, I think the word is confidence, Conrad, and confidence in a region, in an area to invest and form not only your family but your business going forward. How does the West Coast stack up in terms of other areas that you're seeing rural real estate and having confidence in the West Coast?
Yeah, I think picking up on Heath's themes, there's always the West Coast has always been seen as a great opportunity for your first farm, and there's been people from all over the country who've found opportunities to get a foothold in their farming careers by pathway to farm ownership through the coast. And I do think economically there's been some challenges there with the particularly in the dairy sector and in the sort of last 10 plus years, and that is actually whereas the rest of the country was going very strong in dairy, and so but there were some great people in Westland Milk, and they had the courage to actually look at that change in ownership structure, and I think you've got to take your hats off to making that bold decision, because a lot of these guys now are getting more for their advance than they were with their total payout. So I think one of the difficulties, Sarah, is that sometimes when a region's sort of captured by a story, sometimes it's hard to shake it off. And what I've noticed generally, like the rural market the last 2 or 3 years, as we all know, has had its fair share of headwinds for a whole bunch of reasons. But we've definitely seen a recovery. The market this season is, for the same time last year, for this season since July through to now, it's about $500 million up. And about 2/3 of that is a dairy story in terms of some of the improvement and that's more the volume of sales rather than price per hectare. In other words, there's more farms selling. And I'll let Gareth touch on the West Coast and what he's seeing there. But there is absolutely no question that the opportunity to own your first farm on the West Coast, it's hard to see a better opportunity than that for those whose ambition is farm ownership. And I think to Heath's other point, and the Harts can speak to it better than I, but there is a lot more social side to the coast that I think from a family scorecard point of view has some big payoffs as well. So it's a good story, and it's one that's always been there, but I think may have just lost some of its shine in recent years, and we're just looking to put that front and centre back on stage now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And continuing on an insight into farming on the West Coast and that pathway into farm ownership, Jeremy and Anna Hart's story is one that truly represents the topic. Anna, can you tell us about where you're both from and how you ended up dairy farming on the West Coast?
We're both from Waimiri, born and bred.
I have to put it right up.
And we started share milking large herds about 2006, and we milked sort of anywhere between 1,200 and 2,000 cows, and we did that for about 13 years. And we kind of thought we're ready to take that next step, but Canterbury, we just couldn't see the way in Canterbury. Land prices were way too high, so we said we'll have a family holiday down the West Coast. And we had a look around some farms, and then we came across one in the Kowhidangani Valley that we liked, and property brokers had it, so we contacted Gareth, and that's where we are today. But it was hard. Like, large herds got us to where we are, but it was pretty tough going with 8 to 13 staff in the peak, and never really had any family time, so we decided to make that lifestyle change.
And where are you at the moment, Jeremy, and the size of your operation? But also, I understand you've expanded as well. So, talk us through that journey of your business development.
Okay, we milked 300 cows, and we've just bought another 50 hectares next door, so we're going to 400. And the thing I like about the coast is we're pretty much self-contained, so we've got all the heifers on farm, and cows are wintered on, and silage made on farm also. But also the lifestyle's great, and got a really good community around us. Good people. Sort of like it was 20 years ago, I suppose, New Zealand was. But nothing wrong with that. I like that. It doesn't suit everybody, but that's a good spot to be.
We'll continue carrying on through the different themes around making those decisions of where you choose to farm and why the West Coast is. But I do want to hear from what you've seen over your time with property brokers, Gareth, and the popularity, but also who is making up the ownership of West Coast purchases.
Yeah, well, Sarah, we've seen quite a recovery probably in the last 12 to 18 months with inquiry for farms on the coast and interest. Led off the back of what he said earlier with the dairy company sort of restructure. That was a barrier to entry. Now it's seen as a positive. We're seeing a lot of younger people, and it is a first farm, second farm type opportunity. So they're seeing on the back of the strong returns in farming now, stronger returns, and probably the coast lower land prices generally. You were seeing people, look serious at the opportunity, and we've seen a number, that's backed up by the sales, what we've seen this season. Last year, I think 3 dairy farms sold on the West Coast. This year, at least 6 to 7 season to date. And often there is a flurry late in the season, so, we may get We may get 7 or 8 confirmed sales this year, which is a huge turnaround. And in my mind, only the beginning of where we're going to take things. Certainly encouraging story. Need to keep it going.
The next gold boom on the West Coast is the sale of dairy farms, by the sounds of it. Heath, I would like to continue on around the theme of confidence in an area, and with national regulations being of concern, the one key thing I personally would be looking at is the attitude and appetite for supporting farmers from regional councils. I'd love to know how you find Westland Regional Council and their approach to supporting farmers navigating all these changes coming out of central government.
Yeah, pretty good, I think. We certainly have different challenges on the West Coast to what they have in other parts of New Zealand. But essentially, from an environment point of view, we do get a bit of rain at times, but we get enough. So you don't really have issues with water getting on the paddock or stuff getting off it either. So as far as the environmental regulation, most of the farms now are pretty well set up with their effluent, and I won't talk to that. I'll let the experts talk about that. But certainly the consenting process on the coast is there, no question. But there is a good understanding within the councils, both the regional council and the district council as well. A lot of building going on. So a lot of understanding, and I think they get the balance right between environment and economic need, which is all you can ask for. But I think the other point I'd just like to make, and I want to pick up on the lifestyle thing. And I moved back from the UK only a year ago, and I really came for the lifestyle, came for the hunting and fishing and all of that stuff. And I've just had an absolute ball. I won't go into what we were doing during lockdown, but it's and the other thing, we're sitting here in mid-Canterbury, Kirwee, less than 2 hours, and you're on the West Coast. So flipping that around, 2 to 3 hours, and you're in Canterbury, you're at Christchurch International Airport, you're anywhere in the world. So it's not isolated.
Absolutely, and you eat like kings on the West Coast, don't you? At every good
Right,
barbecue.
Are you commenting on my waistline?
No, not at all. I was thinking about your hunting and all the wonderful crayfish and whitebait and access to brilliant
Right, you're forgiven.
produce.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Conrad, what are you seeing nationally in the lead-in times and due diligence in purchasing properties?
Yeah, nationally there's a hell of a lot more now going into the lead times for a sale. So often a farm campaign is a 6 to 7 week campaign, but actually the pre-work into that campaign succeeding or not often means we're dealing with farms in the autumn or even the season prior, just making sure we're ticking all the boxes so that when it goes into campaign mode, we can anticipate the requirements of the banks, the council, all these things that are lined up. And without it being lined up, it's often very hard. And if I look at it more locally on the coast, we've had to do an enormous amount of work sometimes with some of these farms and working with the banking sector and making sure that the viability of the businesses, all the issues are clearly understood, because there's some really great value buying on the coast. And Gareth can comment on what typically somebody might need to spend for a going concern. But obviously due diligence now is in front of everybody up and down the country. But to Heath's point, we really understand it, and we've got some really good support, and we've got very good local contacts to iron that out. And I think the one big thing on the coast that's always been present, and no more less so now, is it's always been people out of the district that are buying the farms, and it's always been that way. And it's a great opportunity, and so I think that's what we're seeing. Every year we run campaigns to bring people from elsewhere around New Zealand, and we've run seminars up and down the country on it, and we continue to do that in partnership with Development West Coast, because it is actually a really solid story, and it's one that we can back up.
And I'd love to know what were the key important things. Let's go and talk about those things like lifestyle, but schooling, and what you personally did your due diligence on when you were looking at the West Coast that was important to you.
Yeah, so we looked at schooling, and there's a really good high school in Hokitika. It's it's a from year 7 to 13, and there's quite a few primary schools, and our local our son went to the local rural school, so that was really cool to meet people and get involved that way. That's what I did. I threw myself into the community and got involved in things, and now I'm local councillor on Westland District Council, so yeah, really throwing myself out there. But
I should have asked you the last question I asked you.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just all about getting out there and meeting people and getting involved in the community and committees, and yeah, so, and really where we farm, we're 25 minutes from Hokitika. It's got everything you need. Like Heath said, it's not far over to Christchurch. We make the trip quite regularly. So yeah, it's all there.
Jeremy, I want to talk more to what Conrad was saying around that lead-in time when you're purchasing a property. How important is it to have all that information up front, and what type of information do you specifically make sure you've got full due diligence on before purchasing, especially when you're coming from outside of an area too?
Well, it's probably more of a question for Anna, actually. I'm just the tractor driver.
Partnership.
Yeah.
Anna.
You bought the stock, didn't you, on the farm?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we did when we purchased our property was we bought the stock that were there, so they knew the farm. There was already good genetics in that herd, and we've just improved them over the years. We bought a bit of plant off the owner as well. But yeah, we did. I mean, we bought the property, signed up the property in August of that previous year, so we had a whole year to sort of sort things out and move things over. So, and prior to that, we'd been looking sort of 18 months, 2 years out. So we'd definitely done our homework.
Gareth, I'd really like to sort of get to the numbers side of it and how it stacks up per hectare for dairy farm prices in comparison to the rest of New Zealand. I mean, here in Canterbury at the moment, they're right back up to near record. That is for very good units, but in terms of what sort of expectations and where that pathway to farm ownership can happen and occur.
Yeah, well, look, it's no secret that land prices generally around the country, rural land prices have taken quite a hit over the last 2 to 3 years, but we are seeing that turnaround, as you said, and in Canterbury we've seen some strong dairy farm sales this autumn, back near that sort of the top end of the market. Generally on the coast it's cheaper, and we are also over there seeing improved prices. Depending on location, infrastructure, soil type, productive capacity, there's a range, but it probably generally ranges from probably 17,000 a hectare now. We've got some transactions going through the north of 20. Historically, most prices over there were probably 24 to 30,000 a hectare. We are heading back that way, but we're on an improving slide, but we're still very affordable. You talk $20,000 a hectare, average efficient production of maybe 850 kilos a hectare. It's a really good return on your money. And the banks, that's what the banks want to see. They want to see that you can be profitable from pretty much day one and repay your debt over 20 years. And that's a story that may not be the case in all parts of the country, but at the coast, your return on investment is second to none.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, a little bit of a summary, Heath, a lot of interest coming back to the coast. You can have a bit more of a sustainable development, learning from other regions as well. And your role in CEO of Development West Coast, what is the real vision and focus for the West Coast to develop in a way that maintains what Jeremy was saying, that way of life that's so special to the coast?
Again, I think we call it the untamed natural wilderness, and it really is. And I think the reputation of the coast has certainly got out there. Used to be the best kept secret around the place, and I think people are getting to understand what the advantages are of living, not just visiting, but living on the coast. So we're certainly seeing an increased interest across all industries and skilled people that want to actually come and not just use the coast as a stepping stone or a fill-in, but actually build a life on the coast. And that's really making a difference because, success breeds success. We've got some really, really cool IT and digital industry on the coast, which is growing. And, another thing to mention, actually, the rural connectivity has certainly been an issue, and these guys probably comment, but it is improving, and there's a big investment going into actually and that's to enable technology to be applied on farms, which will also help with all those environmental things as well. So a lot of exciting things happening, and a lot of it is being driven by the type of people that are coming.
I tell you what, being able to speak to my mum in Haast on her cell phone while she's out walking is quite mind-blowing. So I totally understand what you mean. Conrad, where do you see this going?
Look, I think the examples are already around the table. Heath had a very senior role with the meat industry in the UK, but has made family choices to come back. Look at the people around the table here, there's long-term decisions they're making, and we're starting to see rural professional couples targeting investments back in the coast. So I do think actually, and the other thing at Ag Fest, which was really well attended, and the vibe over there was awesome, and it might have been one of the first events post-COVID for a lot of people, but actually they had everybody from all around the country there. And the hell of a lot of inquiry that Gareth and I took over those couple of 3 days was people from out of town, literally looking at the coast and saying, I think there was a COVID effect with a lot of that. But a lot of people have made some really big financial gains elsewhere, and it's just seeing the value for money and quality of life. And I know it sounds all cliche, but quality of life is often quite hard to get. And Jeremy hasn't mentioned it, but he quite enjoys his jet boat and things like that. And it's not all bad being an owner-operator with 300 or 400 cows, all self-contained, and you haven't had big committee meetings with a whole heap of staff. I just think there's a lot more to it than just numbers.
And you've got time to use the jet boat too. That's the important thing. Jeremy, I just wanted to allude to the fact that you told me about, your pathway was you were sheep and beef farming near Waimate. You headed to the coast to go dairy farming to come back and buy a sheep farm on this side of the the Alps, sorry. It seems that from our conversations that this might be the place for you guys and your family for a long time.
Yeah, as Anna knows, I've settled into the coast really well. But the 10-year plan was when I was 30, or we were 30, to do 10 years dairy and then get back into sheep and beef. But we did our 10 years, and then we started looking at we had a deer farm at the time, looking at a bigger deer farm, but the bank thought it was a good idea that we keep dairy. So we looked at the coast, and I think you can't lose over there. Cheaper land and self-contained, great lifestyle, and natural rainfall. So natural irrigation, sorry. So, yeah, you can't lose.
Gareth, what would your parting words for those who are really wanting to get into farm ownership and needing to look at other options, that this stacks up, lifestyle and for the bank?
Yeah, look, I think it's the time's never been better to get into farming and farm ownership, and I think the coast probably offers some of the best value for money in the country. And it's not the end of the world, as Heath alluded to. 2.5 hours, you're here. I lived in other parts of the South Island, further south, deep south, and in my mind, that's potentially more isolated than the coast. So it's a good place to live and play, but also run a successful business, and that's the end of the day, it's pretty important. So, if you're looking to get into farm ownership, I think the coast offers excellent value.
And if you're looking at getting into the coast, the team at Property Brokers are here on site in the Farmlands tent down in the corner, available to take all of your inquiries. And you've got some great listings on display there at the moment as well. So thank you so much to our panel, Jeremy and Anna Hart, farming near Hokitika, dairy farming, Gareth Cox, who's Canterbury West Coast for Property Brokers, Conrad Wilkshire, General Manager for Rural for Property Brokers, and CEO for Development West Coast, Heath Milne. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Thank you so much for your time.